Today's example, we're going to look at how to bring in a multi-layered Photoshop document and actually bring it in to Premiere and animate those elements in a way that looks like you spent a lot more time than you actually did. So here is the welcome screen from Premiere. Just to kind of do a quick review, if I do new project, you have the opportunity to name it. You have the opportunity to choose where it's going to go. You usually want to point to some sort of media drive, which we are going to do in this example. And you want to make sure that your scratch disks are pointed all again at the media drive. It's a little safer, but the key is just make sure none of this is pointed at your internal boot drive because it's just not going to work as well. Now, my project is already built, so I'm actually going to open an existing one, and I'm going to show you sort of what this is supposed to look like. So it's linking to the media that I imported earlier, I hope. Here we go. So we are going to build something like this. I'll make it bigger. Here we go. Kind of cool. Yeah, here it is again. Got snow going on, you've got some elements coming in, and a sort of dramatic reveal of the company name. All right, so that is what we're going to build. Now I'll start over so that it looks like we're starting from scratch. So pretend this folder wasn't there. First thing I would want to do is create a new bin. We're going to call this clips. If I can learn to type, clips. And maybe a folder with, I don't know, sequences, right? We're going to go import our clips. All right, so I am going to go to the bin I want to import in, double click on it, go to File, Import, or I could have right clicked in this sort of gray area here. And then I'm going to go find the stuff. We are in set 1. We are doing a logo animation, and we are going to skilogo.psd, Photoshop document. This again is in set 1 under logo animation. We don't need the other snow background, we just need the ski logo PSD. I hit import, and ooh, we get a new message. And it recognizes this is a multi-layered clip or graphic. What do you want to do with it? Well, the first thing it defaults to is merge all the layers together. In a sense, don't make work for me, just put it all together the way it would have looked if I had opened it in Photoshop. But we want to actually preserve those layers so that we can do some magic with it, right? So I'm going to say you can merge them, you can merge all of them, you can pick which ones to merge, you can do individual layers separately, and or you can actually do sequence. Make me a sequence with all of these things as the edits already here, which is kind of cool. So if I hit OK, it brings it in, and it brings in this folder called Ski Logo, and inside are all the different things, all the different layers that it made out of the original layers as separate clips for me to manipulate in the edit, and the sequence I asked for it to build. Now again, I like to stay organized, so I'm going to actually pull that sequence out and put it in my sequence folder. So if I double click on the item, it loads down here in my timeline, and I'm going to hit the little key here. And now we can see better what all came in. I'm going to pull the margin down so that I can actually see more of the timeline. And here are all the different layers. And as I turn on and off the eyeballs for each layer, you will see things disappear. And you will see the order in which things are here. And they even named all the layers, which was smart. But that will come in handy for us later. Now, the one thing I will tell you is we had it build a sequence, and I'm pretty particular about what my sequence settings are, right? So we're going to double check what they are and make sure that they're set to what we want. So I'm going to go to the sequence menu, and I'm going to go down to the sequence settings. Sorry, it's at the top right with the name sequence. And it brings up what looks like a create a new sequence menu. These are all the settings we normally would follow, and we're going to double check if we like what it did for us. So editing mode, custom, yes, that's usually what I have you do. Time base, we can leave it 2997 if we want our piece to look a little more like it's filmic, you know, like a movie title. We could go to 24 or 23976. Again, there are these little portions of a frame that are adjusted for time. So I always tend to let it do that. So instead of an even 24, I'm going to set it for 23976. This is going to be a 1920 1080. So I'm going to type in the width as 1920 1080. as my other, and there, as soon as I click out of it, it changes to 60 by 9, which is great because the pixels are already set to square. We want it progressive, which is good, and this should match the number up here, which it does. It's the time code display going in sync with the time frame rate of my timeline. And our audio, again, is usually fine, although we won't do any audio today in this project. And again, you can leave it on iframe MPEG, but I'm going to tell you, get into the habit of going into the QuickTime collection of codecs, and then when it gives you all these new options here, go to the top, ProRes 422. This is going to work really, really well for you, okay? And now I hit OK. Now what it tells me is, hey, you are changing a sequence setting. If there's any renders or anything that you've already done to this sequence, it might have to re-render those things because you just changed the core functionality of that sequence. All right, and it's telling you I'm going to pitch any previous renders you've done, which is fine because we're just going to re-render. We haven't actually done anything to it yet. But if you ever change your sequence settings after you've started, this is going to warn you, okay, if I render, I'm going to have to re-render stuff, okay? All right, so I do that. Now, cool, it's almost as if nothing changed, but I know we did change the size and shape a bit, which is nice. All right, so we already kind of looked at our layers, right? We've got the snowboards are the first 4. So what do you say we do something with those first? So we're going to make these things move on. So I'm going to go to the first one, which is this top left-hand corner one. And I'm going to pull this down a little bit so that it gets a little bigger so you can see better what I'm doing. All right, I want to make this nice and big so you can see what I'm doing. All right, so this is the snowboard in the corner. Now we have a time display here for the length, the amount into our timeline that we have gone. And if you remember, we set it for 24 frames basically. So it counts up to 22, 23, and rolls over to 1. Let's kind of use 1 second as our jumping off point for how long it takes for things to happen. And then just like we did with our name key animation, we can stagger these layers to make it more dramatic later. But this is kind of nice to know that you built everything at a pretty even pace, and then you can always adjust it later. So we're going to go to that one snowboard in the corner. We're going to click on this layer, and if we don't already have it selected, we're going to go to the effects controls so that we can see the controls for that top layer. I'm 1 second in exactly, and we're going to play with the position. So I need to set a keyframe right where I'm parked because I'm parked at 1 second. That is our final landing place, if you will, for this animation. Pretty cool. Now I want it to fly in, so I'm going to go back to the beginning of my timeline. I'm going to set another keyframe. Boom. But right now the 2 keyframes are matched, so there's no movement. But while I'm parked on this first keyframe, I'm going to move that. Now I can move these numbers to do the X and Y axis, but sometimes it's better just to eyeball these things. So what I'm going to do is if you click on the motion, where it says motion, like the category of effect, all of a sudden this little bounding box shows up for the layer that I'm on. So if I grab this image now where my mouse is, if I grab it, it will allow me to just move that one layer in one direction or another. So I just moved it so that it can slide down into position. And it should happen, if I scroll this forward, it should happen and then stop, which is pretty cool. Now, we almost never want to start with an item fully visible, right? We usually want it to fade in. So we're going to fix that. We're going to jump to that moment that it's landed. So I just jumped to the keyframe I already set. I'm going to go to opacity, and I'm going to hit the first little stopwatch button to set a keyframe there, and it made me click it twice for some reason. And we're going to go back and say, yeah, but before it starts moving, there's actually a keyframe related to opacity over here, and it's transparent. It's 0. So now it fades in and lands. Pretty cool. That's pretty much what I was going for, right? All right, so let's do that to all of these, okay? So I'm going to just jump so that I'm already at the 1 second mark. I just jumped to that existing keyframe. I'm going to go down to my next layer, which I'm going to turn that on and off so you can see it is, in fact, the other snowboard in the top right-hand corner. So I want to set position information here too. This is the moment everything's landed. I'm going to hit position. Looks good. I might as well hit opacity while I'm here, right? Because I know I'm going to want it. And then what is it going to do? Well, it's going to slide into place, so I have to go to the beginning, set a keyframe. If I want to get that bounding box control up again, I've got to go to the motion, and then it allows you to see it, and I can move this up about the same as what I did the other one. Just outside the rings, essentially, is kind of what I did. And then, of course, while I'm in this position, I can say, yep, and I also want a keyframe here for opacity, and I want it totally blacked out. And now, again, when I shuttle a little bit across here, you see them both coming in and landing at the same time, which is pretty cool. Let's go ahead and work our way down. We're going to just repeat the same process. I'm going down to this snowboard now. Now, I kind of want, if these are going to fly in, I kind of want them to come in like around a clock. So we got this one coming in first, this one coming in second. I want this one actually to be next, right? If I'm moving in clock, I wouldn't want to jump to this one because that actually goes out of order. So I can always just say, you know what? I'm just going to take this track, I'm going to slide it down there, I'm going to pull that one up, and then I'm going to pull this one back. So they may have been built in the order that we saw, but if I want to do them rotating, then I just want to simplify my life and just flip them around. So I'm going to go to this one. I'm going to go to exactly 1 second. I'm going to do the same thing, right? Position, opacity, which is always makes me do it twice for some reason. All right. First keyframes, first position, go to motion, click on it, and move it out about the same as everything else moved so that it feels like everything's balanced. That's pretty good. At this moment, also, I want it to be transparent. Let's go to the next layer. We'll go a second in exactly. Same deal. Position, opacity, first keyframe, mark, mark, first keyframe, move. We'll move it out here. And we'll make it disappear. And now all 4 come in. Boom. Pretty cool. Yeah, I like that. All right. Now, the first thing I already know that I kind of want to do is maybe stagger those things. So let's stagger them a little bit. I'm going to move them each. That was 5 frames over. This now says 10 frames over. So that means this one should be 15 frames over. And that actually is the first 4. So now if I play it, you get a nice boom, 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 boom. Now, what do I notice immediately? Everything kind of lands a little hard. You know, it's a little mechanical. Well, we know how to fix that, right? We're going to go and we're just going to add ease in to the last keyframe. All right, so I'm going to click on the top layer. I'm going to right click on it. And I'm going to say, take me to ease in. And then I'm going to go to the next one. I'm going to do the same thing. And I don't think the opacity needs to ease in. It's only the movements. So while I click from layer to layer and I'm changing that movement 1, it becomes a very, very sort of predictable pattern. Hopefully you can keep up with me. I'm just going to ease in them all. And now when I play it, they all should move much, much smoother into place. Ooh, yes. Yes, check that out. Much, much better. All right, our skull. So maybe the skull comes up just as those are starting to finish. So let's do the second just for the sake of like simplicity, right? I'm going to go here and I'm going to say, all right, we want the skull to scale in. So I'm going to mark a scale position and an opacity position keyframe as well. Boom. So now we know this is the moment everything has landed. Let's go back to the beginning and let's play before we turn it and make it disappear. Let's make the scale go down. And let's say that it's not going to come a huge distance. It's going to come from about that far away. And then I'm going to set a keyframe for my opacity and turn it off. And now if I watch it, it's kind of cool. And maybe that's the big reveal. Maybe I stagger it to be about 5 frames later too, so that the snowboards come in, it lands. That's kind of cool. Yeah, I like that. All right, so we also have the inner circles, right? So in the interest of being consistent, I'm going to go to 1 second. And let's do something a little bit different with this. I am actually going to play with scale as well, but it's going to have a slightly different effect the way we're going to do it. So I'm going to mark this because, again, it has to end at some point. So I just clicked opacity, clicked scale, and I'm going to go back and set a keyframe for scale, and I'm going to pull the line to about a halfway point between where it's really going to land, then the distance between that and the outer ring. Does that make sense? So it was about here, and I put it at about the halfway point, which might be kind of cool because what I want to do is I'm going to mark this. I'm going to make it transparent. And then I'm going to go to the outer circle, and I'm going to do the same basic thing, right? I'm going to go to the outer circle, and I'm going to mark a scale. I'm sorry, we're not going to position. We're going to scale. Click the opacity twice for some reason. And then we're going to go back to the beginning, and I'm going to set a scale, and I'm going to make sure that this is in about the same location that the other one was. So again, it's kind of smack in the middle of where those lines came from, and I'm going to mark an opacity as well there. So now you get these rings sort of coming out of each other, which is kind of nice. It's a little different kind of movement. Now it looks a little mechanical, so I'm going to go into that scale and I'm going to ease in. And then I'm going to go to the other layer and I'm going to ease that one in as well. And now it should be a little smoother when those rings stop, which is pretty cool. Now the last thing is the names of the company, right? So I've got 4 layers that make up the words. So what I think would be the easiest, if maybe these just fade in. In the interest of time, let's just put a dissolve on the front of each of these. So I'm right clicking on the front of each of these, and I am just adding a simple dissolve. And then I'm going to stagger them much the same way I staggered the other stuff. Right? So we're going to give everything just a little bit of a gap. And I'm being very inexact about it. I could be ridiculous about it, but I'm just trying to make it easy enough for you to see what I'm doing. All right, so now what happens when I play it? Well, we get rings, we get boards, and we get the name of the company coming up. That's pretty cool. Not bad. We could even decide late in the game, you know what, I think the skull should literally be like the last thing that happens. So let's do this. I just moved the skull way down, and now we've got boards and lines and words, and then waits too long. Let's probably don't want to go that long. Let's move it back, play it again. That's pretty cool. I could have started with the skull. It doesn't really matter. And then, of course, if I hit the button above the return button, I can look and say, well, I need this to look solid all the way till the end. So you say, well, I just need to trim these out so that everything stays in place. This won't affect your keyframes, so you just pretty much make it as long as you want the logo to stay up. Now, there was one ingredient in my pre-built one that we have not added yet, and that is the sort of snowy environment. See, now everything ends at the same time. Boom. Nice. Okay, so all I did was drag the ends out. Careful not to bump anything. All right. So let's go to our clips bin again, which we don't have to put it in with that stuff. And I'm going to import using the right click in the gray area this time just to show you the other way. And we are going to go back to set 1, but we are going to go to blending modes. And in that folder, you will find a particulate free image. So I'm going to click on that. It's under set 1, blend modes, particulate free. Hit import, in comes my clip, and I say, well, I want it behind all this stuff, so that means this stuff's got to move up. So I'm going to pull my timeline up a bit so I have some room. I'm going to grab everything and I'm going to pull it up one click. Dunk. It added an empty track down here by doing that. You can also go down here and right click and add tracks and stuff like that. I'm again much more tactile. I like to just click and drag. And now I'll go get my little snowy background, which I can drop in here. And if it's too long, I can trim the back end of it off. But now, when I play it, we have nice snow. I'm going to make it bigger so you can see it. And here is our animation. Not too shabby. Now, I might say again, the timing is everything, right? So I'm going to actually pull the logo down a bit and allow, so that's everything, right? I can put a dissolve on the front so that it actually fades up the snow first. So you get a chance to sort of feel the environment before the logo starts coming up. That also means, of course, that I'm going to have to trim my snow back out a little longer. And here again gives us a little time to sort of register what's going on. Now, moving those things around can become a little cumbersome. There is a way, if you're afraid you're going to bump this and mess it up, there is a way that you can actually crush all these down into a single thing that you can always go back and tweak, which is something kind of nice. So if I highlight all of these, and we're going to leave the snow alone, that's video behind it, but let's just take, and I could include it, but let's just take the layers. All right, and if I right click on the layers, I can go to nest. And what it does is it says, I'm going to make this weird little extra sequence out of these for you, and then it's going to simplify what you're seeing in the timeline you're in right now. So we could say, yeah, sure, this is the logo build, and I hit OK, and then look at that. Now I have a single item, and I can, by the fact that I didn't include the snow in the shot, means I could put it over whatever I want. But this is now a single item. And of course, if you find yourself going, oh, I changed my mind, I really want the skull to come in much, much sooner than that, I can double click it and boom, it loads this sequence sort of version that looks how it looked when you originally built it, and you can make whatever adjustments you want to it. And when you're done, you can go back and it will actually be fixed here and anywhere else you put this in your timeline. All right. So that is how you can import a bunch of Photoshop layers, do something very composited together with a lot of sort of elegant movement, and then work with it simply from that point on. Hopefully that made sense to you.